The first thing Renate noticed was the silence, not the peaceful kind, the kind that settles into a house after something has already been taken. Her living room in Munich had always been filled with small sounds, the ticking clock above the bookshelf, the kettle sighing in the kitchen, the faint hum of evening traffic drifting through the curtains. Now it felt different, empty. Her bank statement lay open on the coffee table. The numbers didn't look wrong at first glance. They looked rearranged. She adjusted her glasses. 40,000 euros transferred. Another 25,000 care adjustment. Another 12,000 medical reserve. She frowned. She had not authorized this. At least she didn't remember authorizing it. But memory, lately, had become something other people questioned more than she did, and that frightened her. Marcus arrived that evening carrying groceries. He kissed her cheek lightly. "You look tired, Mama." She hesitated. "Marcus, did you move money from my account?" He didn't even blink. "Yes, just reorganizing things. It's complicated banking stuff. I told you last month." "Did he?" She searched her memory. There had been papers. There had been explanations. There had been the way he spoke gently but quickly, as if slowing down would insult her intelligence. "You signed the power of attorney," he reminded her softly, "so I can help you." Help. Such a harmless word. She nodded, though something inside her resisted. She had survived childbirth without anesthesia in 1973. She had run a household on a single income. She had managed investments after her husband died. When exactly had she become someone who needed managing? Weeks passed. More transfers, more explanations. Market shifts, tax adjustments, temporary holdings. Each phrase sounded official, each answer slightly rushed. One afternoon, she visited the bank herself. The young advisor smiled politely. "Yes, Mrs. Bauer, your son has full authorization. Everything appears in order." "In order," she repeated quietly. Order, she thought, is sometimes just chaos arranged neatly. The first crack came not from a bank statement, but from a receipt. Marcus had left his briefcase open on her kitchen chair. She wasn't snooping, she was clearing space to sit. An invoice slid out. Luxury SUV lease, 3-year contract. The monthly payment matched one of the transfers. Her breath slowed. He had told her business was struggling. He had said he needed temporary flexibility. Temporary. Her fingers trembled as she folded the paper back. That night, she did not sleep, not because of the money, because of the realization. He thought she wouldn't notice. The confrontation was quiet. "Is my money paying for your car?" she asked over breakfast. He stiffened. "It's not like that." "How is it?" Silence stretched. "I invest it," he insisted. "I multiply it. I deserve compensation for managing everything." Compensation. She stared at him. "When did my motherhood become employment?" His jaw tightened. "You don't understand financial structures." She flinched. There it was. Not concern, not protection, dismissal. Days later, she requested a cognitive evaluation from her doctor. If Marcus believed she was confused, she would test it. The results were clear. Mild age-related memory lapses. Fully competent. She held the report in her hands and felt something unexpected. Relief. And grief. Relief that she was not losing herself. Grief that her son had hoped she was. The lawsuit was not an act of revenge. It was an act of reclamation. When she informed Marcus, he laughed. "You're taking me to court over accounting misunderstandings?" "No," she replied calmly. "Over betrayal." His expression changed then. Not guilt, fear. And for the first time, she understood something deeply painful. He had never believed she would fight back. The courthouse felt colder than she expected. Reporters whispered. People stared. "Elder financial abuse case," someone muttered. She hated the phrase. She was not a victim. She was a woman demanding accountability. As she sat at the plaintiff's table, she looked across at her son, the boy who once ran into her arms after nightmares, the teenager who asked her advice before proposing to his wife, the man who now avoided her eyes. She did not cry. Not yet. Because the hardest part was still to come. Part 2. What he took the courtroom air felt heavy with judgment long before the verdict arrived. The forensic accountant spoke in clean numbers. Cold arithmetic. Total misappropriated funds, 183,000 euros. Each digit echoed. Renee did not look at Marcus. She looked at her hands. The same hands that once buttoned his winter coat. The same hands that now trembled slightly on the table. When Marcus took the stand, he straightened his tie as if this were merely a business meeting. I acted in her best interest, he said. She's not capable of complex financial management anymore. Renee closed her eyes. Not capable. The phrase stung more than the numbers. Her attorney presented the medical evaluation. Clear cognition. Full awareness. The judge's eyebrows lifted slightly. Mr. Richter, the judge asked evenly, why were the investment accounts opened solely in your name? Marcus hesitated. For tax efficiency, the courtroom remained silent. But silence can scream. When Renee testified, her voice did not shake. I trusted him, she said simply. I signed documents because he told me it would make things easier. She turned toward Marcus. I did not know easier meant emptier. A ripple moved through the gallery. Marcus looked down. For the first time, shame seemed to reach him. Or perhaps it was only the realization that he might lose. The verdict arrived on a gray Thursday afternoon. Power of attorney revoked, the judge announced. Full restitution required. The words felt less like victory and more like oxygen returning to her lungs. She had not wanted punishment. She had wanted recognition. Recognition that she was still present. Still thinking. Still hers. Outside the courthouse, Marcus approached her. Mama, he whispered. She paused. His voice carried the weight of a child again. I didn't think you'd understand, he admitted. She studied his face. I understood perfectly, she said. You just hoped I wouldn't. A tear escaped his eye. For a second, instinct urged her to comfort him. But she stopped herself. Love without boundaries becomes permission. I will always be your mother, she said softly. But I will never again be a resource, he nodded slowly. And in that moment, she realized something heartbreaking. The money could be repaid. Trust could not. Months later, Renee began speaking at community centers. She told her story not with bitterness, but clarity. Aging, she would say, is not surrender. She taught seniors to ask questions, to read every line, to refuse polite dismissal. Because what her son had taken was not only money. He had tried to take her authority over her own life, and that, she decided, was priceless. Winter arrived quietly in Munich. Snow gathered along the edges of sidewalks like folded linen. The city moved slower, softer. Renee liked winter. It made the world honest. Nothing hid beneath bloom or brightness. 3 months had passed since the verdict. The money had begun returning in installments, transferred back under court supervision, numbers slowly correcting themselves. But numbers were never the real wound. Trust does not move electronically. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, handwritten, not emailed, not typed. Marcus had always hated handwriting, said it was inefficient. She knew immediately this cost him something. She waited before opening it. Some truths deserve a steady heart. Mama, I have tried to justify what I did in 100 different ways. I called it investing. I called it protecting you. I called it efficiency, but the truth is uglier. I was afraid of my business failing, afraid of looking unsuccessful, afraid of asking for help like a son instead of taking like a manager. I told myself I would repay everything before you noticed. I didn't expect you to fight. That's the part I'm most ashamed of. Her fingers rested on the page. He hadn't expected her to fight. That sentence hurt more than the transfers ever did. The visit he came the following Sunday. No expensive coat. No car parked arrogantly at the curb. Just Marcus, older than she remembered, or perhaps simply exposed. They sat at her small kitchen table, the same one where she had signed the documents months ago. I'm in therapy, he said quietly. She didn't respond immediately. I realized something, he continued. I didn't see you as weak. I saw you as safe. Her eyes lifted slowly. Safe? Yes. I thought you would absorb the damage. Like you always did when I was young. That landed heavily, because it was true. Mothers cushion impact, but they are not meant to become shock absorbers for grown men. You confused love with permission, she said calmly. He nodded. I did. Silence settled between them, not hostile, not warm, just honest. Boundaries, I need to know something, Marcus said carefully. Is there a way back? She considered this longer than he expected. Forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same. I forgive you, she said finally. His shoulders trembled slightly. But I will never give you control again. He swallowed. I understand. And we will rebuild slowly. Like strangers learning each other. A sad smile crossed his face. I suppose I deserve that. Yes, she said gently. You do. The real loss that evening, after he left, Renate sat alone with her thoughts. She did not feel triumphant. She did not feel victorious. She felt something quieter, clear. What he had taken was not only financial stability, he had tried to take authorship of her life, and in fighting back, she had recovered more than money. She had recovered voice. There is a particular kind of grief when your child disappoints you. It is not loud, it is not dramatic, it is a slow rewriting of memory. But there is also strength in realizing your identity does not end at motherhood. She was still Renate, not just mama, not just client, not just elderly, Renate. 6 months later, spring softened the city. Renate stood in front of a small community hall filled with seniors. She told them everything, not to shame her son, but to illuminate patterns. If someone rushes you to sign, she said, pause. If someone says you wouldn't understand, insist. If someone loves you, they will respect your questions. After the talk, an elderly man approached her with tears in his eyes. I thought I was alone, he whispered. You're not, she said gently. And in that moment, she understood something powerful. Pain becomes purpose when it is shared. The final conversation, months later, Marcus invited her for coffee. Neutral ground, a quiet cafe near the river. They talked about small things at first, weather, books, her garden. Then he said, I sold the car. She raised an eyebrow. I'm restructuring everything. Honestly, this time, she nodded once. I'm proud of you, she said, and she meant it, not because he repaid money, but because he faced himself. Growth is heavier than guilt. What cannot be repaid that evening? Walking home, Renate felt lighter, not because everything was fixed, but because everything was defined. The money had returned. The power of attorney was permanently revoked. An independent advisor managed her finances. Boundaries stood firm. And Marcus? He remained her son, not her manager, not her rescuer, not her owner, just her son. Closing reflection. Some betrayals end families. Some transform them. Renate understood now, forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. Trust is a privilege others must earn again. And dignity? Dignity is non-negotiable. She had nearly lost it, but in fighting quietly, steadily, she reclaimed it. And that, more than any verdict, was the true restitution. Time did not erase what happened. It refined it. A year after the trial, Renate stood in her garden trimming the lavender bushes her husband had planted decades ago. The air carried the quiet scent of early summer. Bees moved lazily from bloom to bloom. Her life no longer felt fragile. It felt deliberate. The finances were stable. The independent advisor handled the technicalities. The house was still hers. And more importantly, her decisions were hers. But healing is never a straight line. The call one evening, Marcus called unexpectedly. His voice was different. Not defensive, not ashamed, just honest. I wanted you to hear it from me, he said. I've been offered a partnership, a real one. But they required financial transparency, full background disclosure. Renate waited. I told them everything, he continued. The lawsuit, the repayment, all of it, and, she asked calmly, they still chose me. There was something fragile in his tone. Hope. For the first time, he wasn't asking for approval. He was sharing growth. I'm glad, she said, and she meant it, because accountability had finally become part of him. The distance that healed, they did not return to how things were before. They built something new. Visits became intentional. Conversations became honest. Money never entered the room again, and strangely, that boundary strengthened their connection. Renate noticed something over time. When control left, respect entered. The unexpected question one afternoon during coffee at the River Cafe, Marcus asked quietly, Were you ever scared of me? She looked at him for a long moment. Yes, she answered. He swallowed. Of what? Of disappearing. That answer unsettled him more than anger ever could. She continued gently. When someone takes control of your finances, your decisions, your explanations, you begin to fade. I was afraid of fading in front of my own child. Tears filled his eyes. I never saw it that way. I know, she said softly. That was the problem. The choice later that year, Renate made a decision that surprised everyone. She sold the house, not because she had to, because she wanted to. She moved into a smaller apartment overlooking a park filled with children and dogs and constant life. When Marcus asked why, she smiled. For the first time, she said, I am choosing something without pressure, without urgency, without explanation. It wasn't escape, it was evolution. The speech on the anniversary of the verdict, Renate was invited to speak at a national conference on elder advocacy. The room was large. Professionals, lawyers, families. She stood at the podium calmly. I was not robbed by a stranger, she began. I was diminished by someone I loved. Silence filled the hall. But here is what I learned. Aging is not weakness. Trust is not surrender. And love without boundaries becomes harm. She paused. The goal is not to win against your children. The goal is to remain yourself. The applause was long, not loud, but sustained. The final conversation that evening, Marcus walked her to her car. I'm proud of you, he said. She smiled. I'm proud of me too. He laughed softly. You're different now. Yes, she agreed. I am. He hesitated. Do you think this made us stronger? She thought carefully. It made us honest, and honesty, she knew, is stronger than illusion. What cannot be taken again? That night, alone in her apartment, Renate looked at herself in the mirror, not searching for youth, not searching for regret, just seeing. She had been a wife, a mother, a widow, a plaintiff, an advocate. But beneath all of that, she had always been Renate. The trial had not created her strength. It revealed it. There would always be scars. There would always be caution. But there would never again be silence. Because the most important thing she reclaimed was not money, it was authorship. And once a woman reclaims authorship of her life, she cannot be rewritten without consent. Closing line. Some stories end with forgiveness. Some end with justice. This one ended with identity, and that was enough.